Major Lindsey and Africa presents Bouncing Back, conversations about resilience for lawyers.
Welcome to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. This podcast is brought to you by Major Lindsey and Africa, the global leader in legal search and consulting. I'm your host, Rebecca Glatzer. I'm a managing director in the Associate Practice Group at Major Lindsey and Africa. In this podcast, I'll speak to successful professionals about the hiccups, bumps, bruises, and setbacks they've experienced in their careers and personal lives, and how they ultimately bounce back from those experiences to thrive. Today, my guest is Shanye O'Reilly. Shanye is Director and Associate General Counsel, Head of Licensing and Open Source at Meta Platforms, Inc., formerly Facebook, where he leads a team responsible for technology transactions, licensing, M&A, commercial and IP support, open source, and academic collaborations. Shanye previously served as Associate General Counsel for IP litigation at Meta, where he managed domestic and international intellectual property matters. Outside of work, Shanye enjoys working with nonprofit organizations. Shanye is a member of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, Inc., and serves on the board of the Ron Clark Academy and the Silicon Valley Urban Debate League. Shanye has received the Rising Star In-House Counsel of the Year Award from the African American Managing Partner and General Counsel Network, Silicon Valley Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award, the MCCA Rising Star Award, and the National Bar Association Diversity in Tech Award. Shanye earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from North Carolina A&T State University and his Juris Doctor from UNC at Chapel Hill. Shanye, thank you for being here with me today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So in a prior conversation, Shanye, we discussed the sort of tumult of being an associate at a law firm. And unfortunately, as many have experienced, being in a situation where you're working for a really difficult partner. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, and I'll even back it up a bit. I was at a prior firm in a relatively good situation. I had enjoyed the firm, enjoyed the partners I was working with there, but was looking to lateral so I could get more patent litigation trial experience. So I lateraled to a firm, hoping that I was going to have an experience working with a broad variety of partners. And I was initially assigned to a partner that had lost a few attorneys on his team and frankly was not the easiest partner to work with. So there was obviously a pretty significant level of disappointment associated with the transition. And there's also just kind of a lot of questions around, and really buyer's remorse and kind of regret around making the switch. But I really believed that the new firm could really offer me a great platform and great experience that I could build off of. So for me, it was really kind of digging deep and continuing to be resilient and work at the firm and frankly kind of tolerate the difficult partner while I still really mapped out and kind of thought about what my long-term plan would be at that firm.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And I assume based on kind of the way you're talking about this, that you were not aware necessarily that this partner was particularly difficult and realized it when you arrived, or did you have some inkling, in addition to the sort of loss of associates, that kind of what you were getting into?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going into the firm during the interview process, those other associates were still there. So the thought was that I would be working with a broader set of partners and not necessarily this partner. That was difficult. And as you're right, as you said, completely correct. I didn't necessarily know the partner was actually difficult until I arrived at the firm. But when those associates left and that partner still had work that needed to be done, and I had the background and skill set to do it, my work ended up being kind of relegated primarily to working with that particular partner.
I see. Yeah. And I experienced this when I was practicing. Unfortunately, it's more common than maybe folks outside the law would realize, that, partners have book of business, their money generated for the firm, and more often than not, unfortunately, bad behavior is tolerated because, they're significant money generators, without sort of impugning the guilty or sort of going into too much detail such that we will know who this person is. But, was the nature of it like, unreasonableness, deadlines and, things that just make sense, or did it take sort of a different tact about, your work product or other things?
Yeah, I think it was, I was used to kind of working more collaboratively with partners at my prior firm. So it was kind of the collaborative work environment, but it was also, unrealistic deadlines. You might prepare at the time I was drafting patent applications. You might prepare the patent application months in advance, and you get feedback a couple days before the date in which it's actually due, right? Or you or you may get feedback this same day that it's due to the client. So it was just kind of the unrealistic time pressures and stress that really, it was unnecessary, but it really came with the work, especially for, somebody like me that is really committed and dedicated, right, to the work. And I want to do good work. I want to make sure that I'm providing great client service, and it would just completely conflicted with kind of who I am and the way that I operate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost, I keep thinking to myself, they don't necessarily teach you how to practice law in law school. You learn a lot of theory, maybe you get some practical experience, but you're essentially learning on the job. And I keep thinking this kind of behavior almost sort of sets you up for failure, could set you up for failure, maybe not on purpose. Again, maybe the partner doesn't know how to manage his or her own time very well, so they don't,
Yes.
it trickles down. But it just creates this situation where, you could be not set up for success, which of course is not what happened in your case. And so I'd love to hear, because again, I hear, as a recruiter, I hear this kind of thing all the time. If I had $1 for every associate who called me and said, like, I'm working for a really difficult partner and I need to leave, I probably could retire by now. And so I'm curious how you, practically, tactically sort of dealt with these kinds of things. And I don't know if it's a grin and bear it kind of situation, like, yes, sir, may I have another? Or were there things, skills, or tactics you employed to try to get through this difficult time?
Yeah, I think for me it was definitely a grin and bear it, but it was also, as with everything, just being very strategic, right, about my career and what I wanted and where I wanted to go. One of the reasons why I lateraled to that particular firm is that, my closest friend from law school helped recruit me there. And he had subsequently, shortly after I joined, he moved in-house to Google on the patent litigation team there. And that firm was interested in doing patent litigation work for Google. So it was, relying on my network, relying on some of the connections that he made for me internally at the firm, and just understanding that, or at least believing that the difficulty and the pains of working with that particular partner would be temporary if I was very strategic about where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go within that firm.
Absolutely. And so, I think that there's a lesson there for our listening audience, and for myself even, which is, if you're not happy in the situation you're in, kind of having a vision for where you want to be and kind of figuring out those steps, and knowing in your mind, how to get there. It probably makes that situation a lot more bearable when you can say to yourself, this is only temporarily, only 6 more months of this, or
Yeah,
once I get this trial experience, I'm out of here, or, I'm going to be actively looking for other opportunities, so that I know, again, I'm reassuring myself that this is not the permanence of my situation.
agreed.
Um, Curious if you have any advice about fostering those kinds of relationship. I sometimes hear from associates that say, like, God, the work itself takes up so much time. I'm still learning things on the job. That is a huge time suck. I, have a family at home. I have kids. I have this. I have that. How or what advice would you give regarding, the networking or the fostering of important relationships that will help you further on in your career and kind of carving out the time for that?
Yeah, and I love this question. I was actually on a panel and I was asked this question. Honestly, you just have to make time for it. It's I know it's may not be the most sensitive answer in the world, but I think it's also just kind of the realization that your network and your connections they're gold. They could completely change and transform your career and your situation. I mean, going back to the difficulty that I had with that partner, my good friend, law school classmate Wilson White, who he was the associate who went in-house at Google, and he was able to get me guest staffed on Google Patent Litigation Matters, and it went from drafting patent applications for this extremely difficult partners, that kind of being my sole source of work, to working on Google Patent Litigation Matters, and then more people being able to see my talent, and then getting pulled almost solely into patent litigation, to where I was not working with that partner and I was completely removed. So those networks, those relationships that you build are going to be so important to your career. For some people, they're probably thinking, okay, how do I do it? First thing I say is don't be bashful. I think there are many people that will say, oh, they're too high up. I don't feel comfortable reaching out to them because they're so high up. I think for many people that have done well and that are successful in their career, I think they still don't lose sight of kind of where they've come from, what their experiences were. And, they're very open and willing to help and provide guidance, advice, and don't necessarily kind of view every relationship as one that's immediately going to bear business. I just kind of view the relationships as just that, relationships that you build, and they may end up turning into something that's going to help you in a career long term.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a saying in the South, which is closed mouths don't get fed. So you got to
exactly right.
I mean, you got to be, tactical and strategic, right? You don't need to tell everyone that, you're unhappy and you're working for this horrible partner. But, telling trusted people or folks that you think might be empathic towards your, situation is definitely recommended. This is great. So I'm gathering that experience may have informed your interest in going in-house. Is that what sort of led to your interest in moving and switching gears in that way? That not so great experience with the partner, or were there other things kind of at play?
No, I think long term, I had a desire to kind of to work for kind of and focus on one particular client. I will say sometimes the difficulty in private practice is, especially at a firm, might be, hey, you're working on this great case for this client and you love the client and everything's great, and then the case settles, and then you're immediately jumping. So you kind of jump from client to client sometimes. So I think for me, it was kind of the goal to be in a position where I could just focus and work on one particular client. And I think also just to kind of completely add to the, like, how much better that situation ended up being at the firm after I moved away from that partner. I mean, some of my closest friends to like now are still partners at the firm who I really enjoy spending time with, and great friends and mentors. In addition to that, they put me in a position where I could do a secondment at a client. I did a 4-month secondment on the IP transactions team at Apple, and that helped open my aperture as to what life looked like as a in-house attorney. So that situation completely transformed based off of the network, and it helped me really make the decision that I wanted to transition in-house.
Absolutely. And how did that transition, what did that look like? Was it the first opportunity you got, like through a job board or recruiter? Was it, again, utilizing that network that you had cultivated over the years?
Yeah, it was honestly using that network that I had kind of built over the years. When I saw the opening pop up on the IP litigation team at Facebook, it was reaching out to friends that had friends that were in-house in the legal department at Facebook, talking to them, expressing my interest in the role, having them refer me internally for the role. So when I say kind of the network is gold, I significantly believe that so many great things have happened to me because I've really just taken the time to spend time with people, right? Get to know them, completely, in an unselfish manner. And you just kind of see it come back because those folks are interested in helping you. And I believe that help is one of the reasons why I was able to get in-house at Facebook. Well, it's Meta Platforms now, but it was Facebook at the time.
Yeah, no, and two really good points or takeaways from this. One is uh, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Work on that network now, so that if something goes left and you really have kind of an urgent need to make a change or make a move, you've got some people already in your midst who are your network, who know you and are willing to vouch for you and are willing to stick their neck out for you and are willing to make introductions. And the other part of this is the 6 degrees of legal separation or 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This idea that, like, you may not know the person that's going to get you the next job, but you may know someone who knows someone who knows someone who's in a position to vouch for you or help you get that next role. And this has been true for me throughout my career. Pretty much every job I've ever gotten was not through a job board, was not through a recruiter. It was through friends of friends of friends or some sort of connection who put me in touch with a person who is, the decision maker in that role. And I think that's great advice as well. So, one of the things that sort of strikes me is, being in that situation with the difficult partner is really quite evident of your, great evidence of your resilience, Shane. I think there's a lot of associates who would throw up their hands and say, I quit. There's others that would say, I can't put up with this, even if the end goal is something that I really want or need in my life. I get calls all the time from people who want to just like throw in the towel. And I am curious to know personally where the strength or the knowledge to be resilient comes from for you.
Yeah, I would say it is just understanding. For me, it's just kind of innate understanding of kind of where I want to go, right? What I want to achieve. And as part of that, like there's always going to be valleys, right? That's going to be expected as you kind of decide where you want to go long term as part of your journey. And I think for me, it's now much more mature now, but I think it's really understanding the blessings and the gifts that actually come from those valleys. Like frankly, if everything was good and like there was no issues at all, like I probably would not be super resilient, right? But this resiliency and having that experience, I think, has really taught me really how strong I am. But I think also how strategic I can be about achieving my long-term goals if I still continue to focus on those goals during those valleys. So I would say it's just kind of understanding and defining kind of where you want to go long term and not losing sight of that even during the difficult circumstances.
Yeah, the eyes on the prize thing.
Exactly.
Making total sense to me. I was curious. I have my own theories based on some of your extracurricular activities, but I was curious how that experience with that really difficult partner in your, formative beginning lawyer years has impacted or shaped, your current success and or just kind of the way you view your current role at Meta?
Yeah, I would say the way that and I'll really go into kind of how it shaped me, right? I think how it shaped me is that, like, I genuinely want to help people, right? If people reach out to me on LinkedIn and they want to talk or they have questions about career, experience at a firm, being being an in-house lawyer, I respond. I respond and I'll try to set up time for them and I'll try to give them advice and really mentor and try to support them, any way that I can. And two ways that I'll kind of also add that it's impacted me is just a desire to give back. So I helped create our 1L Diversity Summer Associate Program at Meta a few years back. Last summer we had 31 Ls, 23 partner law firms. And the one will spend 8 weeks at a firm and then spend 2 weeks at Meta, and they get exposed to in-house life and what we do across our teams. I helped create an HBCU scholarship with Goodwin that's focused on graduates of HBCUs that are going to law school in the fall, and providing them scholarships. And I really just enjoy talking to law students and young lawyers and just giving them whatever mentorship and guidance that I can, because I just going through that difficult circumstance and others, I think is just really just maybe want to try to help any way that I can.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and we need more folks like you in this profession who are willing to pull people up behind them when they've reached a certain level of success. I know we're running a little bit close on time here, and so I wanted to ask you, a final question, Shane, which is, the last few years have been extremely difficult for everyone due to COVID, the murder of George Floyd, other world events. I could go on and on. But also, there's been a lot of upheaval in the legal profession, furloughs and tightening of belts, and certain people being let go due to firm economics. And I was wondering what advice you would give newly minted attorneys who may not have experienced this kind of tumult and upheaval in their professional and personal lives before.
I'd say just understand that your legal career, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I will tell you that is one of the values in having older, wiser mentors, because they give you that perspective. And I've seen similar periods of time where there have been layoffs among law firms and some upheaval. And unfortunately, I know some lawyers that were affected. And I see where many of those lawyers are now, and they're doing well and they're thriving. So I think it's just understanding that unfortunately this may be one of those valleys for some, and it is a difficult time, but just being confident in the fact that it will rebound. Keep your eye on the prize and just understand that it will get better with some time. Legal careers, it's definitely just a marathon, not a sprint. So I would kind of leave the listeners that have those concerns with that.
Absolutely. Well, Shane, I really appreciate your time today and being so open and honest about your experiences as a lawyer. I know that our listeners will get a lot out of this conversation. I got a lot out of this conversation, and I sincerely appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. Join us next time for another story about thriving after overcoming challenges. You can find Bouncing Back and other programming for lawyers on MLA's Legal Talk Network.